Welcome to the Lights Out Podcast. This is Chris Lights Out Lytle, and this is our journey to document the history of mixed martial arts. I have brought with me my friend, the MMA detective Mike Davis, and together we will preserve the history and hear some great stories from the world in the era of the no holds barred. Thank you and enjoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, in our comments section on YouTube, we were asked to start a Perretti Files. Well, this is another extension of that. We are covering Extreme Fighting Battlecade number 3 of 4 historic events prior to John Perretti departing for the UFC. Joining us, Martin Spichel. Martin.
Splickle.
Martin Spichel.
Yeah, Splickle.
Splickle?
Splichel actually is not that far off, so
Thank you, John.
roll with that.
Please, John. Martin. Tell us how you entered the stratosphere of John Perretti and like how you stay there.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I met John in art school, which is not necessarily the place you'd think of, where you'd meet your future martial arts instructor. But I remember really enjoying John's class. I mean, he expected things from his students. You know, you had to work in his class, and if you didn't deliver the work, he wasn't too happy about it.
John, what carries Martin? And Martin, you started with Extreme Fighting Battlecade since its inception. Am I correct?
Almost. I think there were some negotiations that were taking place before I got back in touch with John. I was out of touch with you for a couple of years after art school, and I was studying with that kung fu school, and I saw your ad in the Village Voice, and I remember what I thought when I saw it. I thought, wow, if that's half as good as the art class, this is going to be a great class. So I called you the next day, and then that was about late 90 and somehow early 94, maybe somewhere is in there.
All right. So, the inception was what, 95, I believe, 94, it was 95, right, John?
No, you corrected Donald from 93 to 94, because when we were talking about the backstory, you looked up something with your nimble fingers.
Okay.
And came up with those numbers.
Mark, we physically at Extreme Fighting Battlecade 1.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. And
yes.
In what capacity were you there at?
As a fighter's liaison and as an associate producer, yes.
There we go. So let's talk about John's reputation back then. Was he difficult to deal with at times?
Not really. I mean, he made it pretty clear what was expected, and then that's, that kind of kept the mystery out of it.
I appreciate
and
that.
Definitely. I think that was also true of the art class as well as the martial arts class. I think he tended to bring out people wanting to do their best. That's how I felt.
I can see how John could chew up and spit people out.
I'll tell you what. I'll give you one interesting story, and I'll try to keep it brief. It's there was a homework assignment in our first year drawing class, and John asked us to draw and design a kite and then build a little model of it, and to bring it in, then we would make a bigger one and then fly them. Only of a whole class of, I think, 20 something people, only 7 people came with that model that next Friday. I'm happy to say I was one of those people, but that didn't change what happened. But John didn't say a word. And it was a split class before and after lunch. It was 6 hours of drawing. And after lunch, he asked us to take our pads out and basically told us that he was not happy that a number of us elected not to take our work seriously. And he said, well, I expect that model next week, but I also expect this. It's going to be a 6x6 drawing. It has to have a Persian rug in it. One wall has to open out to the sea, one to the Last Supper, and it has to have a man sitting in a chair and has to have 35 flying birds in it. Some pretty interesting drawings came about, and everyone made their kite.
I can see how people that are passive and maybe of not strong character could be run off or afraid of John. Did you also kind of catch that sense when you were working with him behind the scenes? He's got a strong personality. John, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think, certainly on the mat, John had the capacity to be quite dangerous, and yeah, you can feel that perhaps, but I don't know. I never really felt that I was, intimidated in any way. But then he never tried to intimidate me, and I never gave him a reason.
No, because you did your job. You did your job. But John is a guy that I can honestly see, someone that's kind of faking the funk, someone that is like pretending to be there that maybe shouldn't.
Well, I saw that in the art school. I saw that in art school.
John will sniff that shit out in a second, man. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, I saw that. Yes.
Yeah, that's why he's one of dude. He's one of the most reoccurring guests that we've had. I think him and Jeremy Horn, and who's
an awesome fighter and just corner man. I love Jeremy Horn's the best.
He's the best, and it's like Jeremy Horn and John, two of my favorite people. Like if I could have them on every day, I absolutely would. And the relationship with John and I kind of carried on outside of just talking, like in these interviews, and I can see, like, if you're faking the funk around him, you're gonna get caught with your pants down.
Well, yeah,
he's gonna make you look stupid.
Yeah, I think, everyone that's been in that class, me included, is he's called me on it when he thought I was dialing it in. Yeah, that didn't fly.
No, for sure. All right, Extreme Fighting 1. You were there for the first event. You were also there when the event got switched from New York
to Wilmington. Yes. And my initial job, and also my way down, was to make sure that everybody from the fighters' entourage that got on the bus in New York City also got off it once we got to Wilmington, North Carolina, which we didn't lose anyone. So
then you're at the second event where everybody's getting arrested in Quebec.
I was not being arrested, but I was there the whole time in Montreal, and we didn't leave. And it was Phyllis Lee, the wrestling promoter, and you've probably
he loves Phyllis Lee's stories.
That's
great.
I do.
Really
I love
old program, Phyllis Lee. But Phyllis Lee, Conan's wife, and I made our way to the jail pretending to be relatives. Phyllis pretended to be Jim Teachout's mother, and he didn't fire and didn't play along, so he didn't get to see her. But Conan's wife went in, and I pretended to be Igor's cousin, and so I got to speak to him in there. And I basically, the message was, "Don't worry, no one's leaving till you guys are out." That's how it turned out. We were there Monday morning in court with the money.
And you also witnessed John going home and then hearing that people were arrested and then returning to the scene.
Yeah, you came back. Yeah, John came back.
That's
a fact. No, I think that kept a lot of faith with people. I mean, that means something. I think it calmed probably the fighters in the jail down quite a bit. They're like, well, if he's willing to come back and share this time with us, all right, it's like they're not leaving until we're out. And it was it was 8 fighters all together, and with everybody, $5,000 bail each. I think Donald, actually, we got the money and he handed me the cash. I had it in my sport jacket from the Friday until the Monday. I didn't take that jacket off the whole time. That's a lot of faith from Donald. Yeah. He said, "Here, this is safer with you than it is with me. You hold on to it."
He's right on that. Yeah, because if they arrest him, they inventory it, and it's frozen.
Yeah,
possibly. I don't know.
So
it's certainly in the equation.
The whole weekend, pretty much.
Wow.
Well, everything's in the equation with Donald. I mean, he's always thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone.
Yeah.
So, Martin, where you're at, you've got the first event that got moved, the second event where there's mass arrest.
Yes.
And now we're heading into the third event. At any point, did your faith waver in the Extreme Fighting Battlecade company?
Not in the least. No, yeah, no, not ever. I just saw what was being put in and the heart behind it, and the fighters coming, and wanting to be on the show. And one of the fringe benefits of being in the school is that, quite a number of these guys came by to train at the school, and that was a tremendous opportunity for me, So I definitely always remember that.
You see, because that door, what you don't know is that door was always open internationally. So anybody could show up on any given evening at the school. And they did. They came from all over, whether they were Tai Chi fighters from, West 23rd Street, or they were, German or Russian jiu-jitsu guys, from the team, or wherever they came from, they came, and they all came to that little school, amidst my paintings, and that's where we trained all the lungs out. In fact, that place started, I don't know if you remember, Martin, but we started out just training on oak floors.
That was right before I came. Yeah, that was right before you had just gotten the mats. I've seen videos.
Yeah, so I mean, you have to understand that, that was really, there was such an important continuity that occurred there as the sport started to, take form. My marshaling started to grow immensely because of the amount of people that we were bringing in and the quality of material.
So was this at your gym? Was it Madison Street Muscle?
No, Madison Avenue Muscle was on 38th and Madison. This was at my home, 109 West 26th Street, my loft that I lost to an individual.
We're not going to throw the D word around, huh? So let me just kind of, like, you're in New York, you've got the gym, you've got the loft. Is this also where you do your artwork, or is
that's my studio, and then half the studio we have broken down, and the mats would be put out, and for classes. It's an immense loft. It's 1,800 square feet, 12-foot high ceilings.
Yeah, it was a gorgeous space.
Yeah, rent controlled.
Yeah. Oh man.
And they still took it. Anyway, so so it was a multi-use space. But we did, all the interviews that Donald talked about. I did all the casting there for other roles for the show. I mean, it was nonstop. There were people sleeping on the floors there, staying over. I mean, it was just nonstop. But he got to see it pretty early on, and we had a lot of talent came through there. A lot of people, did not make the show. And and a lot of people later on, didn't make the ultimate there either.
I remember when Igor came by, when you brought Igor, because when we trained at the New York school, there were these elevator doors, and whenever you'd hear them, you knew somebody was coming up because there was a code, otherwise you wouldn't be coming up. And there was a key or, something like that. I forget exactly how it worked now, but you'd hear the elevator and you just had no idea who was walking off. It was one night, it was Igor. I remember I hadn't really trained very long. I shot on him, and all of a sudden I was not up in the air in this, looking at the ceiling. And all I remember you saying, like a class earlier, look at the floor and slap. And I did that. So that was good. That was good. That was a good piece of advice I took with me into that.
So you mentioned
Zinoviev. I had no idea who was shooting in on it. All of a sudden I was airborne.
So you met Zinoviev prior to him speaking any English at all?
He spoke some English, but not much. It was, probably the way that Schwarzenegger spoke German, English, in the Conan movies. But he could, yeah, he could speak some English, and he, definitely got, constantly improved. So he
And
had his accent.
said a lot with his fists, especially that right
Yeah.
hand.
I think that he also, he had that accent, so but he could definitely speak. Yeah, absolutely.
So, John, you actually go all in on this event. You've got Gary Dell'Abate from the Howard Stern show. And I remember like listening to the plugs, when Gary would announce like where he was going to appear. And I thought it was so cool, man. Like Gary Dell'Abate is going to be at an MMA event because it was like such an outlaw sport at the time. And I was a huge Howard Stern fan, as well as like anybody from like that eastern portion of the United States, particularly New York.
Yeah, at the time when he was on New York radio, live every morning, he was definitely a character on the New York scene, no doubt about it.
John, do you remember what that may have cost you to get Gary back then?
Nah, that's a Donald question.
Was it your idea or Donald's?
There was an intermediary. I can't remember who it was now. But Gary wanted to learn to roll around. Shit, I can't remember, but there was some intermediary. Huh?
Yeah, Gary wrestled in high school.
Yeah, there was somebody. It could have been Bob Myeri, the photographer, lawyer, Donald's friend. I don't remember, but we wangled our way in there. And if it had anything to do with politics, it was Donald's idea.
Okay. Well, you decided to do the third event, October 18th, 1996. So, John, at this point, were finances tight? Were you concerned about it, or was it smooth sailing?
No, I still hadn't made a nickel. I think I put in 60 grand to try to get what's his name out, the guy we don't mention, who supposedly coined mixed martial arts. We got rid of him. I bought him out. But extreme fighting, I didn't make a nickel.
But you guys only did 4 events. On the third event, was there any like warning signs that things were coming to an end?
No, no, not really, because if you look at show 3 and 4, they could one up, almost any show today with all the budget and all the shit that's going on, because you're only as good as your matches.
That's true. That's true.
Your talent pool could be, limited, but you're only as good as your matches. You have to have faith in the quality of the match. And from my perspective, which was different than say Meyerowitz, I rolled around with these people. I did stand up with them. I knew what they were worth. And if I couldn't handle their worth, if you were Pedro Izzo or something, or just too big for me to handle, I could see you go up against people that I could handle,
So Donald Zuckerman in our interview said he wasn't paying attention to the UFC at all. And I believe him. He was just like, he had to really concentrate on what was in front of him in order to make this work. What about yourself? Were you focusing on what they were doing?
Absolutely. And one of the biggest disappointments I ever saw was that first UFC where we were supposed to be on and they were on. That was incredibly disappointing. I don't remember who I was there. I was with LaBelle or John Keating or some. There was a bunch of people, and I was just like, this is what they're showing people after how close we're getting to a real sport. They're doing this silliness. It was just silly from the get-go. And as having, I don't know, then for sure, got kicked out of the Machado school that Gene LaBelle walked me into. I had no.
What was the catalyst behind them kicking you out?
I invented a sport that while you were trying to do jujitsu, you could get knocked unconscious.
Okay, were you being a little rough in the gym, or were you just not following their program?
No, no, I wasn't rough at all. The thing is that I created an environment which was proving that jujitsu wasn't the all fangled fucking thing. You know,
You know, in your matchmaking, and I've said this, John, before you even got here, like if you look at your matchmaking, there are certain instances where it is clear that you're trying to show the public, hey, guess what? You know, there's other art forms out there that are just as effective. Here is my example. And the jujitsu practitioner would walk into these situations, and it was like they stepped in a bear trap. And, you know, and then it was too late
yeah.
before they realized it.
Yeah, no, I think Martin can attest to that, you know, because, you know, he was around when I was training Zinoviev to get ready for Royce Gracie. And the kinds of training that we did was just as eloquent and new as, you know, anything that was going on anywhere on the planet at the time. Right, Martin?
Oh yeah, you mean the Sperry fight? Yeah?
No, no, because we didn't know he was fighting Sperry.
Oh
He was
right,
being
yes,
groomed
that's
to
right.
fight. Only I
That's
knew that he
right.
was being groomed to fight Royce Gracie.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, I remember.
Well, we used to do
That's right.
I used to make him do
Yeah,
some
no, that
heinous,
training
heinous
schedule was
training.
unbelievable. You
All right,
know, yeah.
we got to
Wow.
speak at one person at a time. Otherwise, like we can all follow it, but it becomes kind of enmeshed
You got it.
on a podcast. So we got to be cognizant of that. So, John, you've kind of got this whole thing going on. Essentially, the UFC is the West Coast. Extreme Fighting Battlecade is the East Coast. It's kind of like the actors on both sides. Like, you know, it's like they're just two completely separate entities, although they are doing the same thing. And there's a huge difference in matchmaking. Like in terms of overall product, John, at this time, you would publicly refer to the UFC as purposeful mismatches.
You can't be any nicer than that. You have to be a fucking dork to not understand what I'm saying.
Did you ever run into any of the people from the UFC brass, like in person? Was there any confrontation on their end towards you?
Before I was hired?
Yes.
No.
Phone conversations?
No. I criticized them publicly and outright. No.
That's interesting.
There was no backstabbery until I got there. And that's what Wormy talked about, remember?
Yeah. Well, he really wouldn't, though.
Well, that's James Wormy.
Yeah. I tried. I mean, John, I tried to get him to open up. He just wouldn't. The fight order on the DVD appears to be different than what appeared live.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
That don't forget, those DVDs are sold to another company, which pops them out, and you know they get the rights to them, so they can get the wrongs to them also.
Right. And the only existing copy that you can find online, and man, it really hurt me to listen to this. So sometimes, like when people are creating YouTube channels, their intention is to be like, well, okay, well, here's this product, but don't forget how cool I am. Like, here, let me give my snarky comments or my little, you know, BS opinion of which, you know, I probably shouldn't give. And it's pretty bad, man. Like, it's the person doing it. It's one of those situations where I would love to show up at his house with some of the fighters and just hand him a piece of paper. I want you to read this to the guy. Say it to his face. Because there's just, it's a shame that this event does not exist online anywhere else.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of shames, you know, out there. You know, it's a shame that that Dana White got to do, his the Contender series when we did the Contenders.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of shame out there, but there's also a lot of convenient cover up, and there's a lot of stuff going on that happened in the trenches, and I'm what I feel about it is that you can't compete with the disinformation campaign, and it's not my intention. I don't look back like that unless I'm doing it, with an eloquent host like you.
Oh man, I'll take that. John, you also disappeared for about 20 years. Like I heard you were in Japan on a fishing ship. You were like just a fisherman in Japan, completely changed your life, walked away from the sport of mixed martial arts, and then all of a sudden you pop up again.
No, spearfishing is what I do. I'm a spearfisherman, right? Is illegal in Japan. So no, that's not true. I did not do that. I traveled all over the world spearfishing, and became quite good, and had a couple world records, and I enjoy spearfishing, but all my spearfishing, 99% of it happened in Mexico where I lived, before I moved to Japan.
Yeah, you were pretty much an enigma. You've also been airbrushed out of a lot of UFC pictures, like classic UFC pictures.
Everything. But don't forget, I was still writing, and I still produced my memoirs, and was writing thereafter, and had a one-man show in 2013 in LA. I lived in LA. I hadn't disappeared. I just changed my focus again, because extreme fighting and the UFC, and that was all a sideshow for me. There was a lot of other stuff. I was a stunt coordinator and stuntman for 20 years also. The time clicks off, just that the people watching can't keep up with it, and that's going to continue also. I'm still alive, and I'm still pursuing my what I want to do, and still being with people like Martin after how many years?
We met in 1986.
Holy
Fall of 86.
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, I was.
So my gym opened in August of 84.
You're going almost on 40 years. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, there were a couple of years here and there we weren't in touch so much, but we never really lost touch.
So John, the event starts with Todd Bjornethun, who
What a great guy.
Dude, incredibly underappreciated. Like if you look at that guy's record, it's insane. Especially like his competing in Japan in the Pancrase organization.
Well, yeah, but he was right there with Matt. So
Matt Hume.
Right. So, they were commingling, and so he had a good experientials, and he was on my list of promoting for the future, but yeah, a tragedy.
Yeah, you had Todd Bjornethun versus Rudy Moncoyo. I think we're gonna have Rudy lined up.
Rudy Moncoyo.
Yeah, we're gonna have him lined up in the next couple of weeks. What was Rudy's reputation outside of the ring, John Perretti?
I don't know. What do you think about that, Morton?
Oh, he was just the sweetest guy you'd ever meet. Awesome guy.
I was told that he kind of dabbled in, I don't know, pharmaceuticals.
Not in front of me, he didn't. No.
Well, he did in front of me, but but that's not why he was there. It's not why I gave him a shot. If you think about who I gave a shot to and who I didn't give a shot to, who was in the, he was there because he was really strong, and he was willing to learn. And also, in California, he's training with me all the time. So he got better.
Was he a talented guy?
He could do things in a linear way that he might have been, the most strong guy, but he had a flexibility issue because he bench pressed, for a living, so to speak.
Right.
So, and that, was the culprit of his shoulder. And that's why he didn't fight Frank. But he did try out to fight Frank.
All right. How, yeah, like I said, we're going to have him on, and I talked to him briefly. I generally do not do pre-interviews, and I talked to him briefly because his career, he's only got 3 fights, And I asked him if he'd be open about some of his dealings, and he said, 100%, no problem whatsoever. Ask me whatever. I mean, I've got a couple loaded questions, which allow me to kind of ease into that without trying to hide or skirt around the issue. But how prevalent was his dealing in regards to like steroids and things of that nature?
I don't know his list of things. I think this would be a lot easier conversation with him on the line at the same time of what he had access to. But I mean, everybody looked to him, and he knew everybody.
He's a pretty personable individual, you know, which makes it easy, especially being a large guy, easy to talk to. Usually you don't get those two together.
Yeah, he was an interesting guy, you know. I got him into SAG, which I got him his card on a show that I brought him on. I think he was doubling somebody. But anyway, you know, we hung out a lot together.
Yeah, so Todd Bjornethun out of Seattle, you know, the Pacific Northwest, wins by heel hook. Now, you got to kind of keep this in mind. I would say until about 2010, the Brazilian community started acknowledging heel hooks. I'm not going to say existing, but acknowledging them in class and allowing them to practice. Prior to that, it's garbage jujitsu. It's this, it's that, the other thing.
Yeah, but you know, and I have my hat off to Gene, because you know Gene taught them with me there. You know, every fucking leg lock possible. You know, it was, you know, and then all of a sudden they put out the secret Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu leg lock book. You know, it's like Bruce Lee who couldn't tie his fucking shoes, right? Gets on set in the Green Hornet, and then Gene starts teaching him how to give shots and not punch people's teeth out and stuff, and to be a better stunt person. And then he starts teaching him everything in terms of fighting, and all of a sudden Bruce Lee, you know, writes up all his hidden leg lock books. You know, a guy who couldn't tie his shoes.
Hey, Tyson, I got Tyson fact checking this. I think that's the clip right there. I'm sure that'll get us I think
You don't have to worry about Tyson finding clips, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, that'll get us a lot of comments. I'm sure all very happy about hearing that. Todd Bjornethun, he's a Matt Hume guy, Josh Barnett guy. We're talking 1996. He's pulling off heel hooks. Like, that's in itself. I mean, Dean Lister is the one that kind of brought it to the United States and kind of made it, I don't know, palatable in jiu-jitsu gyms. And this guy was doing it like 20 years prior, which is pretty incredible. Yeah, but 15 years prior. Pretty incredible.
Joel also a really strong wrestler. Like, not in the sense like you know, like Kevin Jackson, but a really strong wrestler who took it a lot further because of his tutelage with Matt. That's why you know, subsequent fights with Matt, you know, I took advantage of that stuff.
I think that Matt would have done, or Todd would have done really well in ADCC. The Abu Dhabi. I think his career was over by that time in '98. Yes. Is when it started.
Absolutely over. In fact, he couldn't. I don't think he was in. I don't think he could get offered because he was sick already.
Well, he beat it. He beat it. Like, it was something curable that he got from a match in Japan.
And man, you don't understand what those dojos in Japan look like. You know, everybody's like, "Oh, so clean and beautiful over there. There's no garbage on the street." Well, there's no garbage cans. That's why there's no garbage. Everybody takes their garbage home. But those mats were filthy, man. They had dried blood all over them. They had, I mean, it was just, they were filthy. And, you know, and the gis with blood all over them and all kinds of shit. It was a fucking mess there. When I first walked into those gyms where the pancreas guys were training, I was like, what the fuck is the matter with you people? Clean this fucking place up.
Yeah, I always thought the young boys kind of took care of that.
God, no, it was a fucking mess. And so I'm not surprised that more guys didn't get sick, and that's why we blood tested and that's why we CAT scanned and that's why we did all the things before anybody else did. And Martin was involved in that too.
Dude, I've been trying to get Todd on a couple times. He responded to an Instagram message. If you guys could reach out to Todd Bjornethun and give us a little bit of credibility, because his story is absolutely fascinating and it's tragic, but with a good ending. And to be honest with you, it could have been like the stars aligning and telling him you gotta get out of the fight game. It could have been that as well. Heavily involved in the First Amendment with the arms and stuff like that. So, cheers to him. Joao Roque and Abdelaziz Chagari. I mean, Joao wins by armbar. That's the second fight. And then after that, Johil de Oliveira and John Lewis. So Johil de Oliveira, for those of you guys that might not be aware, he holds the record for most headbutts in one fight, and it's 98 against Jose Pele Landy. And Jose Pele Landy.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, but who's a fucking hard guy to headbutt?
Jose Pele Landy is arguably 2 weight classes higher than him. And at the time, Johil is studying to be an attorney. And he took it like last minute. So Johil de Oliveira, and he beats Pele. Johil de Oliveira, to me, at this point, based on what John Lewis has done in the past, this might be like that world championship, for that weight class, in my opinion. Was it your intention setting this fight, John?
No. I mean, John Lewis knew early on that, I thought, that my exposure to him was such that, he was a true, mixed martial artist. And that I would be glad to have a true mixed martial artist, be my champion. But since we didn't have judges, thank God, we didn't have any of the problems that judges bring, like the ultimate saw and saw and saw and saw and saw. No, that wasn't my intention. My intention was to bring up heavy hitters against each other, to make the pyramid grow and to keep it moving in the right direction.
Okay, so Johil used wrestling to beat Jose Pele Landy. And I tell you, like, he was already a veteran of Japan Vale Tudo. And John Lewis, I mean, he was in mount almost the entire fight. I mean, it was shocking, the difference in talent.
What are you saying?
I think John Lewis at this point is light years ahead of everybody else.
And there's a good fucking reason.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you call him a friend of yours and a training partner. You were definitely trying to give him the stiffest match possible. Like, you weren't doing him any favors. In my opinion, he walks into this fight, might be the underdog on paper.
I never considered that. And I don't even look at shit like that. Don't forget, it's my group, right? It's my pyramid that I'm creating. I mean, I don't look around and say, oh, well, like, he beat him, he beat him. No, I just know that the style of fighting, those guys are incredibly good at what they do. And John was very diverse, and could do other things. No, I don't agree with that.
Dude, Johil de Oliveira was a savage, and he's one of the Luta Libre all-stars. So it's like you're also pulling in guys from Luta Libre and not just sticking with jiu-jitsu.
No, because I love those fucking guys, and I love their attitude towards the other Brazilians. I just love the whole shootbox clan, and that's why I discovered my axe murderer.
Yeah, Wanderlei Silva. Sergio Bartarelli managed him when you discovered him.
I don't remember that. I remember that I only dealt with the little guy who ran the fighters in shootbox. I don't remember his name. Brunette, Brazilian guy, shorter than me.
Huh. Well, I mean, I know it was Federico Lapenda and Sergio Bottarelli way back in the day.
No,
You're talking
no,
somebody else.
I know those
Yeah.
two guys,
Okay. All right.
not those two guys.
So Andre Pederneiras was in John Lewis's corner as well. But Lewis really kind of ran in between like Jean LaBelle and Jiu-Jitsu. And he almost leaned more towards Pederneiras than he did
Absolutely. Absolutely. He divorced Gene, pretty early.
What was the reason behind that?
He swallowed the pill. He wanted to be, he wanted to be a sycophant. He really wanted to be what they call those guys, the dirty dozen, right? He wanted to be that, guy. And then he had a really incredible school, and then I don't remember which one of his entourage decided to, stab him in the back and take all his students. But he had a great school, and Pederneiras was a nice guy, and they trained him up. Well, not in Hicks and Gracie's opinion, but I thought that John was a better fighter going into fight Gracie than he was thereafter, because John had other skills, that those guys didn't have. They could not do what John could do. I've said this before. You've heard me say this before. You can take a world-class stand-up fighter, and make him a world-class grappler. I mean, I'm a good indicator of that, right? But you can't take a world-class grappler and turn him into a world-class stand-up fighter. You can't turn him into a Maurice Smith or something. It's just impossible. Impossible.
I will further this. You can't take a world-class jiu-jitsu practitioner and teach them a world-class single leg takedown.
You can't even teach them how to box.
No, you
because
can't.
They don't have legs underneath them. I mean, the thing about Martin and I is that we saw everybody, and we got to, to taste them, so, I thought John was a better fighter at being John than he was at becoming, what those other guys became. When I was cornering John, in Japan, when I cornered Igor for Ensign Inoue and John for what's his face, basically, that was my corner. Just because he had Pederneiras there, it doesn't mean anything. He's not. I mean, there was a language barrier to it. You know what I mean?
So, Martin, you're backstage, moving all of the parts, making sure fighters get to and from the ring. Everything's organized. Hey, dude, this is a crazy question. I don't even know if you're going to remember this, but at this moment in the event, the ring announcer announces that the doctor needs to go to the fighter entrance for an emergency. The ring announcer, in other words, where's the doctor?
Oh, no, I actually don't remember that.
It's on the DVD. It's on the DVD.
I don't remember that either.
I have. It's funny. I own one. I've seen 4. I've never seen 3. I've never seen the DVD.
I own it. I just don't have a DVD player anymore.
And I own nothing. And I have nothing. But the thing is that there were a lot of fights during these fights. A lot of fights in the stands during these fights. So,
really?
Martin was in charge of that shit.
Martin, was it bad?
At the very end, actually, after the Conan knockout, my friends actually from the school were in the stands right near them, and apparently somebody of the locals threw a paper cup at their corner, and they just turned around and just started choking people out. And so there was a bit of a fracas going on, and I was actually leaving, and I saw the Penthouse Pets. They were standing there. They were kind of like looking, what the hell is going on? I was just like, this way to the exit. Let's get out of here. I mean, it ended up not really getting out of control, but you never know.
It happens, man.
Yeah, no, it got exciting. Yeah, apparently a few people lost consciousness in the stands.
I can see that. Okay, Martin, how was Allan Goes backstage? How was he to deal with outside of the ring?
See, it's interesting because you see him, you know, in the event, and he's like clearly headbutting the guy. So that's not very good sportsmanship. But one-on-one, he was actually pretty pleasant. The only feeling I had with him firsthand was when there were a number of fighters, and Todd Bjornethun actually was one of them. Goes was one, and maybe one other one, I forget who it was, didn't get their AIDS test done. And I had to drive the blood samples at like totally illegal speeds to the hospital. Was it Iowa City or Davenport? One of the two had the one hospital in the area that would do it 24 hours.
Well, this event's in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yes, that was after Oklahoma. It was in the next event.
Okay.
It was in the Des Moines event, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because Goes, lot of bravado, certainly some arrogance, and he didn't give a shit about the rules in this fight. And you know what?
No,
the rules,
apparently not.
based on like him getting his hand raised on a foul, he read it right.
Yeah, on some level you could say that. Again,
Well, come on.
that's something that I think is really a good move, but he got the win. You know, I mean, is that right? I don't know. You know,
Allan Goes,
like, not for me to say, but
Anthony Macias, Allan Goes, John Perretti, your thoughts on that bout?
Should have went longer. I just thought, you know, Allan, to Allan's credit, you know, he's one of the guys who actually tried to learn to kick. You know, like he tried to train to kick. You know, and most of those guys just said it was all stupid until Conan's head went flying across the fucking ring into the audience. You know, they all thought that kicking was just stupid. And you know, I was creating a sport that, you know, I'd rather see a head knockout, you know, from a kick than anything else because of the viability of it. And my own prejudice, right?
For sure. And you're the matchmaker, so you're going to tilt the table that way.
And it's my show.
100%. John, what was it like dealing with Allan Goes, from your perspective? Because he definitely carried himself in a very.
I didn't have a problem with Allan at all. I thought he was always really nice to me. I mean, he was a dirty fighter. But look, I mean, we had Ralph Gracie. My God, you know, I mean, he'd choke people out and kick them in the head on the way standing up. You know, I mean, that was the whole Brazilian mindset. You know, and you know, Rickson wasn't immune to that. You know, it's just the way they operate. You know, very interesting for the second largest Roman Catholic community in the world.
No, but Goes was pretty personable one-on-one. I mean, when we sat there during when the blood was about to get taken, yeah, he was totally pleasant.
So, John Perretti, could we agree though his in-ring antics kind of dickish?
But I mean, we didn't even have that word then. You have to understand, you know, it's in retrospect, everything can be like categorized and pigeonholed and things of that nature. But at the time, you know, I'm trying to create great matches. You know, I mean, Allan Goes, you know, was a viable, you know, in-house, you know, jujitsu guy. And you know, he never turned a fight down for me. He always showed. I can't remember him not showing. A lot of guys did not show.
Oh, okay, and that's fair. But did his arrogance come into play when you matched him at UFC 17 against Dan Henderson? It certainly worked against him in that fight.
Well, Dan was, you know, equal with any as the toughest fucking man out there. You know, and Greco-Roman guys dominate the clinch. I don't remember the fight directly.
It's pretty even. It's split decision, win in overtime. It's
But I know that, Gallen could hold his own with anyone, especially if he was being defensive.
it's the first time Allan Goes has lost in like over a decade.
Well, then you can say, well, who did he fight?
Well, I mean, he was like 7-8 time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu like
That's
national
my
champion.
point. That's exactly my point. That's like if you're going to fight in a homogenous fishbowl, you're going to beat the guys who are lesser than you. I mean, who did you fight? Like it's really simple. You say, oh, Rudyard Moncoyo, who do you fight? We fought Mario Sperry. I mean, you go, whoa, wait a second. You got a who'd you fight? That's really what it comes down to.
John, when you were at the UFC helm, did you ever try to make Dan Henderson versus Chuck Liddell?
No.
Oh, fuck. That's like that one fight that got away from me.
No, Chuck, I didn't think much of Chuck
Until
he was matched by his manager to become a superstar.
Well, dude, he fought a murderer's row. He legitimately fought some high-end people. Hey, listen to this. Did you try to get Chuck Liddell to shave his mohawk?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because I thought he would be less cliquey as like a I don't know. I had a problem early on with the whole like Japanese menus tattooed on people's bodies, because I'm a Irizumi specialist, I have a full body, tattoo from Japan, I mean, so I had a hard time with like people having like Chinese characters on their fucking shoulders and heads and stuff. And I just thought he was just a handsome motherfucker and that, he was really going, it's just my opinion. It's just my opinion. I also did tell him that, I really would love to see, a knockout, when I used him, I told everybody that he wasn't like, oh my God, you told him to not wrestle. I told everybody that. I told, Kevin Jackson, please, Kevin, you could have this fight, Kevin, but please go train with Gene a little bit and, and just don't do me one favor. Don't take him down. Just don't take him down. Nobody can take you down. He can't take you down. Just get out there and swing a little and, and have a little fun and box and don't let him take you down and don't take him down, Kevin. 17 seconds later.
Yeah, well, Kevin Jackson, you're talking about somebody that wrestled from the age of 4 and 5. And I mean, there's no money in wrestling now. There's even less money in wrestling then. So you're
told all those motherfuckers that during the contenders, they were going to lose all their fucking talent. They didn't listen to me. And they didn't listen to me.
Martin, how is dealing with Ralph Gracie?
He was a bit of a volatile character, let's be honest.
I don't believe that.
There were two sides. I mean, he could be charming and funny, and then he could be kind of completely out of his gourd. I mean, most of the time, he was pretty okay when I dealt with him, but yeah, he was
that edge exists though, right?
He was a bit edgy.
Yeah, you can see it, like coming through the door. Like, damn.
He definitely had an edgy energy to him.
Dude, I almost had him for an interview 3 times, almost, and it was just like agreed. Let's go. Did the research, send the link, and then like 8 hours later, oh, sorry, brother, I missed you. Oh, sorry, brother, I missed you. His story's fascinating, especially like if you can kind of settle him in and allow him to speak, because
oh my God,
he's very short with his words.
You want him to speak?
I do. Yes, I do. And he's no punk either. Like, you know what I mean? He's knocked people out at jiu-jitsu tournaments. And, and he gets a lot of shit for that. Like, he really does. And I wouldn't even ask him about it, truth be told. But the thing is, like, if you do business with a guy and he gives you his word and you give him your word, and and the one person you're doing business with has a reputation of like on the street, you can't be shocked at getting street shit thrown at you when you go back on your word. Like, I know this might not be a popular opinion, but what took place at the IBJJF, I'm Team Ralph Gracie, dude. I think I'm not going to say he did the right thing, but I'm not going to say he's wrong. You know, the dude he did business with.
What are you referring to?
A guy opened up a school real close to his after promising he wouldn't, and Ralph gave him like many opportunities in the past. And when the guy opened up a school within the radius that Ralph asked him not to and lied to him and avoided him after doing it, Ralph handled his business.
But who gives a shit about that? We're talking about sport here.
I give a shit about that.
I don't know why you're bringing this even up.
He's the real deal, John.
What do you mean? I dealt with him. I know if he's the real deal or not. I know if he backstabs me. I know what he fucking does. I know how to deal with this guy. You know, okay. He doesn't understand that we were creating a sport and making a team of a sport, and he wanted to be on a little pedestal all by himself, you know, and he had all his little Klingons around him. You know, I mean, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're talking about some incident that occurred, you know, in his hood, you know, where he defended his turf. You love that shit.
He did.
You love that shit. You're such a cop.
I do. I do like that shit, John, which is why we're here. It's true. So Ralph is pretty edgy, but I think Health is pretty edgy. Did you guys ever deal with Hume?
Yes, I did.
No,
I did. I met him.
Is like, in my opinion, Health is like a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10 in regards to edginess. Hume is like a 15.
These fucking guys, man. I'm telling you, they're swimming in this little fucking tiny place, right? And they're biting each other's tails, and the Machados don't like the Gracies, and this Gracie doesn't like that Gracie, and you know, and they're in this little fucking pond. Extreme fighting made them get out in the fucking world and realize that they could get knocked unconscious with their fucking egos in their pockets.
Well, you had him fight Health Gracie versus Ali Mihoubi. He was a 1996 French Kempo champion. Was that his original opponent?
No. He was a really hard guy to match. I mean, 10 years later, I could have matched him and he could have gotten beat 50% of the time. No, it was very hard to match that guy. I mean, it was really, I even had to like delve into like Japanese like guys to try to match with him, and they just all look like shit against him. It's not that his game was just, I mean, his game was incredibly limited. But it was a very tough time. It was a very hard time. And I really wanted to like Health, but he made it very difficult. Do you recall this stuff?
Well, here, why did he have to be on the card?
Why did he have to be on a card?
Yeah, I mean, you're stressed out. He's impossible to match. I can see that. I mean, the lower weight classes were pretty much non-existent outside of that of yourself and a couple an organization in Japan. But like Health, if he's that difficult to match, I mean, why bother?
Well, because I still wanted to show the ultimate that, you know, that we had legitimate fucking, you know, black belts in jiu-jitsu. You know, it wasn't the Royce Gracie show, you know.
Yeah, Mario Sperry, when I interviewed him, he said that he was watching UFC 1, and he said that the entire group of people that he was watching it with were laughing.
Going, yeah, so were we.
Yeah, like
it was fucking ridiculous.
We want that fight. We want that fight. Like
this. The thing is so sad is that you had a music promoter, you know, who you know dipped his foot in this inkwell, and you know the footprints were really miserable. You know, I mean, really miserable. Some of this stuff was just so stupid. You know, I mean, I think I won $50,000. I told Ron Van Cleef wasn't going to last, you know, 3 minutes. You know, I mean, it was so stupid and so apparent to me. And I don't know, it was a debacle. And that's why, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools are all over the world, in every little mall. And it was like Taekwondo in the 70s,
It's wild. And growing, still growing. Like it still
Yeah, I'm
hasn't
sure.
peaked yet. Martin, speaking of interesting characters, what was it like dealing with John Lober?
I didn't deal with him personally much, but he was pretty personable. He seemed a little pretty intense. I mean, I don't know if you ever read his book, which I actually
have.
recommend, The Machine. It's a highly entertaining and pretty brutally honest book. But anyway, yeah, I think he was kind of nuts, very tough. But yeah, I had no problems with him. And I think Igor, when he fought him, I think he had one shoulder that was totally injured. That was not even working. I forget which one it was, but their fight was pretty. Like I watched it, yesterday in anticipation of talking about it, and the Erik Paulson fight, the Matt Hume fight. I forgot how good that fight was. But yeah, it was holy cow.
All right, as good as the Paulson Hume fight, and it's still good today. Zinoviev and John Lober are both very intimidating guys, but they're like different ways of intimidating. You know what I mean? It's just like two guys that are incredibly intimidating using two very different methods to do so.
Yeah, I mean, they're both incredibly tough men who are combat professionals, like in the ring, Igor in other ways, but in the ring.
They beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah, that was a fight.
That was, I mean, they were both looking at each other like in the second round going, fuck, you're still here. Like,
well, yeah, and also Zinoviev, arm was hanging off, I mean,
yeah, he really literally only had one shoulder. Yeah, I remember that.
Did he get injured in practice?
Yeah,
he
before
got injured in training.
Oh no!
In fact, he wasn't going to take the fight. He didn't tell me about it, but he wasn't going to take the fight.
That bad?
He had a completely dislocated, right shoulder.
Yeah, because those guys, like they're looking at each other, and there's obviously some like you're talking like grammar school. There's some playground respect there. Going, wow.
Oh,
dude,
definitely.
You're still here. I ain't going anywhere. I ain't going anywhere either. And it's like those two would have beat the shit out of each other all night. Like they weren't going to stop. Like, and they weren't really going.
Yeah,
for
somebody would have had
submissions.
to get choked. My money would have been on Igor, but
But they weren't going for it.
It's a fight.
They were trying to break each other, like physically.
Yeah.
It's like, no. Forget the submissions. We're gonna break each other physically. We're gonna see who bends first.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Lober. I have so much respect for him. He was just so fucking crazy strong. I told you about that great story, where he broke his tibia and his fibula, and I had to jump in the ring in fucking Japan and rescue the fucking guy who he was fighting against, And he screamed. I took him to the hospital, and he was screaming and yelling. And I had nothing to do with them. I just had so much respect for John Lober, he broke his tibia and his fibula. His foot was on backwards. And when I ran in and stopped the fight, I jumped in over the ropes to stop the fight because the referee didn't know what he was looking at. And the other fighter had jumped back and went like that, and his foot was on backwards. And then he was pissed off at me for like 3 weeks because he thought he could still beat him.
Right. So
his foot on backwards.
I look at this as like the East and West Coast rap wars from like the 90s. You got Zinoviev, obviously from Russia, but representing the East Coast. You got Lober, Huntington Beach, California cat, to where even like the hardest of individuals, like Tank Abbott, Tito Ortiz, they kept Lober's name out of their mouths because they knew John Lober would show up. Like John Lober's a tough SOB. It was like an East-West Coast thing that ended in a draw.
Pretty amazing. There was a lot of matches in my head for John Lober, but But John did a great job every time he fought. For me, I have a lot of respect for John Lober.
Yeah. I keep in touch with him. He sends me videos of his neighbors yelling at him that they step forward. I'm not gonna say leaning into a fight, but certainly he's not going anywhere. I bet you walk away first, not me. Yeah, Lober's out of his friggin' mind, dude. Still out of his mind.
He must be 50 now, right, Martin?
Yeah, I would think. Yeah,
I think he might be older than that.
That's about right.
So Zinoviev had Gene LeBell and John Lewis in his corner. And the thing about Lober, what I noticed, he liked to keep his back towards his opponents until it was time for him to step out of the corner. Like he really didn't, I'm not gonna say he didn't like looking at the opponents, but he was putting himself in a different place.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It sounds like a psychopath to me.
Dude, you know what? I got guys from California when I was researching Lober, and they were like, yeah, can't say this came from me. And the things that they were giving me were like no big deal. Like it was just like, yeah, he's a tough guy, one of the toughest, absolutely out of his mind, crazy. And like the things that they were telling me were complimentary of him. And they're like, no, this didn't come from me, dude.
His jiu-jitsu guru was Ken Gabrielson.
Yes.
And I've been trying to get in touch with him, but I have not been successful. Maybe he's forgotten who I am. But I always wanted to talk to him about John because they're not on speaking terms anymore either, I don't believe.
Lober's not on speaking terms with anybody.
No, he doesn't. I haven't spoken to him in about 10 years now.
No.
I don't dislike John Lober. I have a lot of respect for John Lober. Just Philly strong.
When Lober hit the suplex on Zinoviev, were you guys surprised?
Well, no, I was stupefied, but I only realized that he couldn't hold him because he couldn't use his shoulder. But yeah, no one. I mean, you got to understand. Here's a guy I've been training with for years. Who was an immovable object, and when he didn't want to move, like he's a guy who we triple mounted while I punched him in the fucking head if he didn't escape. Triple mounted. So I know what he was capable of doing. And I had never seen anyone suplex from a fucking good morning position, which is a 90-degree angle. And do that.
If you look at Lober also, like rules don't get in the way of him kicking somebody's ass. Like he got warned for a headbutt, and at one point they checked for cut. But if you watch, Lober's standing over Zinoviev, hands in his shorts, pulling up, and you can see like Zinoviev's cup, while Lober's punching with the other hand, like he's pulling him with his shorts while punching with his other hand. Like Lober
sounds very hockey.
I'll tell you this right now: if I'm in a bar fight, John Lober might be my top pick. Like initially, I thought it was like people from Hammer House. Lober cracked that. Lober cracked.
Yeah, no, I mean John Lober's a bad bar fight. Hopefully, you can use, appendages, and stools and things against him. But he's a bad bar fight, and I used to pride myself on getting into bar fights. But he's a bad bar fight.
Yeah, you don't want that. You don't want to touch that.
It ain't worth it. And I hung out in New Orleans with Tank Abbott on all kinds of extracurricular, drugs, and he's a bad bar fight too. He's just a bad bar fight. There's some very, very dangerous individuals. Tank Abbott on the proper drugs. And he can be very, very articulate. but he, and also he could be made to look like Baryshnikov in there against the right opponent.
Eddie Ruiz, another Huntington Beach guy, another bad bar fight. You don't want to bar fight Eddie Ruiz.
Yeah, I don't see him in that category.
And at 155 pounds, took third in ADCC. Tank Abbott, John Lober's former training partner.
But I just don't. I just personally, I don't have the experientials to say, that someone else is in that
category. That's fair.
Category, with John Lober. I always wanted to match him with Rico Chiapparelli.
I've tried to get Chiapparelli on here for years.
Rico Chiapparelli was very adverse to actually stepping up to the plate. But I thought that would have been a really good fight considering the skill sets that Chiapparelli had.
Yeah.
But he didn't have the heart.
He certainly had the talent in regards to training, the training and pedigree. Yeah. I mean, he was a brown belt, got kicked out of Henzo's gym as a brown belt because he cornered Tom Erickson against Murilo Bustamante. He was.
There you go. That's just Brazilian politics right there.
Yeah, pretty talented guy. Yeah, Rico.
He would have been. It would have been great for certain fighters, but couldn't come to the plate.
Okay. Matt Hume versus Erik Paulson. Dude, it's amazing. You guys got to watch this thing today. John, during the broadcast, you had said Japan had been trying to make this fight for 8 years. I think you may have been a little off on your timeline on that. But
well, I exaggerate.
Oh, you got to. I mean, but obviously very incredible. How were you able to thread that needle when people in Japan were not?
Because everything Japan's a work. These are two guys who really, I mean, I'm still, enthralled watching, Erik Paulson, say stupid things on his YouTube channel thing. I just love Erik Paulson. And Matt Hume, I just had, so much respect for. I just thought that they were perfectly matched. I thought that Erik was a little better standing up, and that I thought Matt Hume was a little better wrestler, but that the leg locks really put Paulson in a position to be able to do it. And having, touched them, you realize how fucking powerful, littler guys could be, I mean, look, he just manhandled Kenny Mundy.
Did you roll with Matt Hume as well?
Yes.
So going into this fight, who did you think would win?
No, I didn't know who was going to win this fight.
Holy
I very rarely knew who was going to win a fight. I mean, I very rarely knew who was going to win a fight. I mean, maybe like 2%, and then I would never say it, but I would. No, there's no fucking way I knew he was going to win that fight. In fact, if he didn't get that adversion cut, which is a cut against grain, which is very rare, by the way, to have a cut against grain.
Was it that bad, the cut?
Oh, it was horrendous, and it was against grain. So instead of like you and I, if I hit your bald head, you're going to cut across with your frown lines, because the skin will move in plates, right? But he got cut he got cut vertically, and it's impossible to close. And that stopped the fight.
I tell you, both those guys have got pretty big reputations. I think at the time, Paulson's reputation may have been a little bit larger than Hume at the time. And when Paulson got the cut, he handled it like a warrior. Didn't complain, didn't argue, accepted, the fight ending. But you can tell he didn't want it to end.
Of course not.
But the way he accepted it was so impressive.
And Erik had, so many, stand-up fights, so many, GQ don't-ish, engagements. So he had a tremendous, wealth under his belt. I would think that, I wanted to rematch it immediately, but, we lost our business.
How often was Paulson in the same room with Gene LeBell?
Not with me, never.
All right. So here's the thing in our first Paulson interview. Erik Paulson was mentally ill with like finding new knowledge and understanding like the mixed martial arts way. He would do doubles at work in order to save up for privates just to feel somebody. And like somebody in one point in our interview mentioned a name which sounded like somebody else's name, like one of those traditional martial artists, where Paulson goes, "Oh, you mean so and so? He was on the corner of this corner and that corner that intersected. He had this school." And we were talking about that guy. But essentially, like he knew the entire layout of every dojo in the Los Angeles County area. And him not showing up over at Gene LeBell's, kind of surprising.
Well, Gene LeBell's is an invitation only situation to the cabin.
Yeah, they're both actors. I mean, Gene obviously stunt coordinator.
No, Gene was a stunt man. He didn't coordinate very much.
Okay.
But, he has enough, credits to rival Kirk Douglas.
Okay.
But like the point is that,
same circle.
No, it's not a same circle. It's a hierarchy. And, and Gene was very, very, very careful about he brought into the hierarchy, that Lebellian world. So I was very happy to be involved in that at a very early thing. Have I ever seen those two in the same room together? No, ever. No.
That's too bad. I know he was a big Danny Inosanto guy.
Who?
Paulson.
Yes.
When I saw Kazunari Murakami versus Bart Vale,
Uh-huh.
Both guys with a lot of obvious lineage in Japan, I honestly had thought that you guys were going to start branching out and maybe start doing shows in Japan.
Well, we didn't have the money to do shows here, no less
Yeah.
in Japan.
Yeah.
And then I had to pull, UFC Japan, the Meyerowitz hated the Japanese. It was very difficult. If they didn't finance the whole show, as Wormy said, he would have never done that. He just hated the Japanese. Couldn't deal with them in terms of, the way they are being Japanese, I really, I had a lot of connections in Japan I couldn't use.
Bart Vale, another very large personality.
I didn't really engage with him much. I don't remember really too many interactions with Bart Vale. Yeah, he was a guy I didn't really deal with.
John Perretti, Bart Vale, real deal or faking the funk?
Well, he proved to be as real as he could be. But the thing about Bart is that, he was surrounded by, all those Carl Gotch guys, so he would, Carl, he was the real deal. Carl, would break your finger just for the fun of it, as Gene would, as I would. It's a plumbing issue, shit flows downhill, and I stand by that, to this day, so Bart Vale proved what he could do, and he did what he could do. And then did he, was he great? No. Did he come back? No. So he had his moment in the sun.
Well, I think his moment in the sun was knocking out Ken Shamrock in Japan.
So you got to understand that, I don't know a lot about those fights.
Okay.
Or if they were actually fights. I don't know a lot about them. You're this like, hot for information guy. Probably a lot more about them than I did. I didn't look at stupid shit. I only cared about creating a sport, and the sport wasn't going to have open hands in it, and it wasn't going to be owned by the Gambino crime family.
When John, you see, you got a lot of connections to Japan, you know, and like we both agree, I really enjoy stupid shit. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Gerard Gordeau, when he was in Japan, he blinded Yuki Nakai. Are you familiar with any of the backstory with Gordeau in Japan and what took place there?
Some bald guy, right? Some skinny, like light
Oh,
heavyweight
come on,
bald guy,
dude.
right?
Come on, dude. Savat
like a
master, UFC one, first fight ever.
Savat.
Yes.
Think about it. Think about what you're even saying, right? Savat.
He went to New Japan Pro Wrestling and knocked out the owner.
Pro wrestling.
Yeah, but he really knocked out the owner.
Pro wrestling.
Also took out the.
What do you want? I mean, how can you even comment on that?
Took out the eye of Yuki Nakai as well.
Okay.
You know, Rickson Gracie, he actually softened Yuki up for Rickson prior. The guy that made 145 pounds that took Rickson about 7 minutes to dispose of, even though he had one eye and had the shit beat out of him for a while. But Bart Vale,
why do you bring this up?
Dude, you got connections in Japan. You open the door.
Yeah, but I don't know about those things. I mean, if I say I don't know about him, I don't know. I remember what he looked like. I remember he was a bald guy. He was like a light heavyweight. He looked like a gas station attendant. I mean, I can't remember anything else about him.
Martin, he was also smoking in the UFC 1 rules meeting and in between bouts on his way to the tournament finals for UFC 1.
I vaguely remember something like that, yeah.
Bad motherfucker, bro. One of my favorites. Maury Smith and Conan Silveira.
Not a bad fight.
Very good fight. And it appeared on paper that Silveira was just supposed to come in, do his thing, and leave with the belt.
Yeah, well, and there was Maurice Smith. You know, it was a great fight, that.
And Maurice was amazing, man. He had the hips. Maurice's hips are unbelievable. You pin him against the fucking ropes and against the ring, and he moved his hips and he stood up. It's like, what the fuck? I mean, rolling with Maurice Smith is just a whole different world, you know. It's just, did you roll with him, Martin? Did you roll with him, Martin?
I did, actually.
I mean, he is so
very
powerful.
strong.
So powerful.
Yeah, he was real nice to me.
You know, Maurice kind of
he's powerful.
He brought an element to the fight game where it was like a smile, and it was just different. Like his thing was, yeah, I've been around a lot of these blocks already, guys. Okay, the tough guy thing. Yeah. All right, let's just go fight.
You know, he was an incredibly charming guy. No,
yeah,
So
unbelievable.
classy, but still, you know, he had to deal with Tank Abbott, and he had to deal with Tank Abbott after the fight, and he had to deal with a jacked up Tank Abbott who was embarrassed, and he had to deal with, you know, all kinds of things that happened that night. So Maurice was a class act, and you know, when I think about Maurice is that I think Maurice's downfall came when he decided that he had to defend the tackle other than throw the right hand. When he stopped throwing the right hand, that's when I started to say, uh-oh, he's taking away his best weapon and he's not using it because he's so worried about being taken down. That changed Maurice.
Yeah, Frank Shamrock was a phenomenal influence on him as well in regards to his adapting to mixed martial arts.
And vice versa.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree with that. I mean, you saw that in the John Lober rematch. I mean, that was ingredients of Maurice Smith, you know, kind of coming to fruition. You know, the cream rising to the top. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mo is just, he was just a maniacal athlete.
Yeah, conditioning. He said he loved running stairs, just running stairs.
And he was a quadzilla. I mean, he was amazing.
Well, cardio won a fight. And he said it. He said cardio was going to win the fight. Like he literally said that.
his conditioning was always on the money.
And the thing is that, with Maurice, he was always vulnerable. But when you were playing his game, he was so many steps ahead of you, like Conan, Carlson Gracie. I love Carlson, but, he was a terrible cornerman. And, Carlson Gracie telling Conan to outbox him was like being with syphilitic whores, and not wearing a condom. It was so ignorant. It was.
I was shocked, especially coming from Carlson. Like,
is a terrible cornerman, Carlson.
I don't know. I'd say in one instance he was bad. In this
This
instance,
is not jujitsu. This is a new sport. This is not jujitsu. This is something that was being created that they didn't understand.
yeah, I think Maurice Smith was just supposed to lay down in their eyes. They'd be in, they'd be out, hand raised. And John, once again, you got over on jiu-jitsu. Like, you couldn't get Conan Silveira in the first one, but you got him in the second one, or the third one, I should say. He tried.
Yeah, there's a kick heard around the world. It had a lot to do with what's his name, Kurt, his coach, not using your legs until, well, he did use them underneath, but not using his legs until he forgot that you had legs.
Yeah, he had Dale Cook and Frank Shamrock in his corner, and obviously Carlson, the great late Carlson Gracie in the corner of Conan Silveira.
Yeah. Hey, those are what a card.
Dude.
What a card.
Like, we don't do this with anybody else, but it's like, what I like to do is just kind of like, hey guys, modern mixed martial arts, there's a start. Where is it? My argument, Extreme Fighting Battlecade. That's my argument.
Yeah.
Listen to the fights that we're talking about. If I were to kind of like show you what was in the UFC at this exact same time, it's not even close to being the same thing.
It's like Abu Dhabi saying that they created, professional grappling. Right?
I'm not sure that they do say that. I think people
say that in writing. They say it in writing on their website. So it's like them saying that and never producing a card like the Contenders.
Yeah, well, that's a fact.
Yeah, it's a different format. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Martin, what's your favorite memory of Extreme Fighting Battlecade?
Probably the Igor Sperry fight. That was just unbelievable. Yeah, that was, in terms of the fights, that was one that really stands out for me.
What about backstage?
Oof. There was a lot of memories, but really, yeah, just the reaction, and it's, in a sense, even that Igor fight, the reaction to it afterwards, where it was pandemonium.
Was there almost any fights backstage after that?
I don't think so. There were a couple of teams that we kind of had to keep apart in terms of dressing rooms. Like, I think the Half guys, were definitely, you had to keep them in separate rooms from like the Carlson and Goas crew. Yeah, but not really. No, everybody was pretty well
separate
behaved.
cages. Separate cages.
And I actually have to say this. Yeah, Mr. T. Mr. T was just great.
He was. I agree.
Yeah, Extreme One. I actually, another pretty good autobiography in his own voice. Worth a read if you come across it.
John, the cage wall was about 5 feet tall.
What's that? I'm sorry?
Yeah, the cage wall was about 5 feet tall. Would you have changed that looking back on it, John Perretti?
No. That's why we had the John Lewis rule. No overhooking the fence and grabbing. After he did it. No.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have changed that. No, I actually wanted somebody to pick somebody up and throw them out of the ring.
Tank Abbott would have done that.
No, he couldn't do that.
He would have. He tried to do it in
No,
UFC.
he can't do
He
that.
tried to do it. He almost did it in UFC.
Yeah, because that was a spindly fence. That was chain link crap fence, that moved with him. But the extreme fighting fence didn't fucking move. That lobster wire was rock solid. There's no way he could have picked somebody up and put him over that fence. But I wanted somebody to do it. I thought somebody could like fucking do that. And Lober, shit, maybe that was the guy that could have done it. I mean,
Yeah.
with a lesser guy, in his hands, maybe he could have done it.
I mean, John, after this card, you got to be high. Like, you got to be, adrenaline going. I mean, I still get it watching like intense fight cards now, especially when they end with a knockout with Silveira and Maurice Smith.
But just think about, how many fucking Demarols fucking, the UFC had to take after watching that.
Yeah. When did they start communicating with you, John?
2 days after I got fired, after we got shut down.
How'd they reach out to you?
They had my telephone number somehow. I still have the same telephone number.
Who was it that called you?
David Isaacs, I believe.
Oh, wow.
And then I called Zuckerman and he said, yeah, go talk to them. They need your ass.
When you booked Chuck Liddell against Noe Hernandez
Yeah.
at UFC 17,
Yeah.
Charlie Anzalone was his manager.
Charlie who?
Anzalone.
I recognize the name.
He was the guy that you caught trying to give you a bribe.
I recognize the name. I can't see him.
Huh.
I recognize the name for
He
sure.
usually wore like a suit with no shirt underneath it. With a
Oh, I
hat.
remember that motherfucker. He's like a pimp.
Yeah, for sure. He was like a YouTuber before it existed.
Yeah, he's like a pimp. Yeah, I remember. I mean, I don't remember dealing with him, if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
No.
John Perretti, we're going to get to aliens, reptilians, underworld entities, and all things beyond this dimension.
I hope.
We will get to it.
A lot of talk over there, but
I'm not equipped. I'm not equipped to even like go down that road. Do I believe that shit? Fuck yeah. Why not, dude? Absolutely. Dark, like what, Underworld Sun? Fuck yeah. Why not, dude? I'm in. Yes.
You wouldn't be alone. All throughout history, people have been talking about this. Why would you be alone?
John, Flat Earth, are you in or are you out?
I'm in.
Martin?
What's this now?
Flat Earth.
I don't know
I'm
about
not,
it.
I'm not in for flat Earth. No, I didn't hear what you said.
Are you in for Flat Earth or no? Do you believe in it?
No, I don't think so. No.
Negative.
You think we're a round ball?
Yeah, I think
More or
that, I
less,
think
yeah.
Charles.
Not
I think
perfectly
Charles
round,
Fort.
but
I
yeah,
think Charles
more or
Fort
less.
said it the best. Charles Fort said it the best. Said when one particular rock falls in one place in one town every 6 years, and no one's watching. There's something going on up there we can't see. I'll give you that. There's a whole Sargasso Sea floating up there. And dropping like all kinds of stuff. Let's drop live toads on the same town 7 years in a row. Let's drop live fish here. Let's do this. Let's do that. I mean, Charles Fort, was way ahead of his times in the 1920s. And we can talk about that for hours.
Right here. Do you think the sun is 80 million miles away?
See, that's Charles Fort right there talking.
I don't believe that. Like, I think the most full of shit organization in the entire world is NASA.
Of course, not a straight answer.
No. In fact,
Run by Nazis.
Yes, they are. He's Nazi, Satanist, pedophile, and a fucking.
No, I mean literally taken over by the Germans.
Yeah.
But socialists.
But also an actual pedophile, also an actual Satanist, and an L. Ron Hubbard guy. Yeah, Scientologist.
All you
Like
gotta
actual,
do is all you gotta do is read. gentlemen.
All right,
That's what
wait.
it comes down to.
So, ladies and gentlemen, John Perretti here. The belief of like the flat Earth community, Hibbler is the guy's name. He actually doesn't make the argument that the Earth is a flat plane. What he makes the argument as that NASA and their numbers are lying, that the size of the Earth is much different than that is what is being told to us. And I heard a scientist kind of go back and forth with the argument with him, where he said, even by your numbers, you're admitting the Earth is 5 times larger than what it is we're being told. He goes, either way, I win. And you know what's kind of crazy too? Like when you hear the arguments, and dude, there's some flat Earth people that are just, I mean, they're all a little off to begin with, but there's a few that you should listen to because they've got actual science backing their argument. What they try to say is that like it's just that NASA is lying to us, and whenever they go with the moon, the arguments in regards to the numbers with the moon, the scientists that are anti-flat Earth go, I acquiesce, you win, let's move on to the next part of our argument, because they can't argue the numbers of the moon and what it is we're being told it is.
Yeah, let's
Like
stop pretending we went.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's stop pretending we went to the moon.
Dude, anyone that went to the moon, like my brother was like a full-on mooner. Like we definitely went there. And then like I started like sending him pictures. Oh, here's the vehicle they drove. Oh, here's him hitting a golf ball. And I remember like, he's like, dude, this is
here's
bullshit.
Here's the same mountain in every playback. You know,
yeah,
I mean,
and then like he tells me, don't send me this bullshit. And my response is, that's what you believe.
I went drinking with somebody who was a DP for a certain movie of fame, and he got really drunk and talked about different things, and we can talk about it in the future. It's secondhand to me, but you know, there's a guy who was there. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of information. And people repress it, you know, and you know. Anyway, it was great being with you guys. Martin, great to see you.
Absolutely, great to see you, John.
Hold up. I'm ending this, not you, John Perretti. Martin, have you ever slept with a reptilian? Yes or no?
Not to my knowledge, but one girl had kind of a sandpaper tongue.
John,
no, not to my knowledge.
John, same question to you.
I believe so.
The best. John Perretti is the fucking best. John, you're the best. Okay, so everybody listening to this, John, in August, you're saying that you've got an art gallery opening in Houston. Am I correct?
Yeah, on the 7th of August, you'll see Martin there. He's going to help me hang.
All right.
Yeah, that'll be awesome, John. Yeah, let's do that.
All right. In 2025, August 7th, that is this show's Woodstock. We're all getting together in Houston. All of us, I mean, there's no females that listen to this, but all of us men, we're getting together for John Perretti's art show.
There's a lot of people coming.
After my birthday, Mike.
Tyson, one more time.
That's the day after my birthday.
See, another guy that doesn't get laid. Tyson, we're going to be there in Houston.
I can't wait. We'll sleep in the same hotel room.
Yeah.
Get you a couple of reptilians to sleep with.
John, we might need you to provide us a couple lizards. So we're not talking about the ones found in a trucker stop.
At least two. Yeah. At least two.
Thank you, Tyson.
Tyson is Martin. Tyson is an aluminum welder.
Tyson,
wow.
Turn your
okay.
Tyson, turn your
I know
TV
that
on.
from my boat days. Like, yeah, aluminum is a whole other trip.
He's an aluminum. That's all he does is weld.
Yeah, aluminum. That's Yeah, not everyone can do that. Yeah. I was part of a boat project where we were at Northwind, and yeah, I saw the guys welding aluminum there. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Yeah, not everyone can do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, gentlemen, I gotta go.
All right, me too. Tyson,
All right.
you're the
Thank you,
man,
Tyson.
brother. Martin, nice meeting you. And we will all four of us, minimally, hopefully Joey Venti, Andrew, Michael Green, the rest of the guys, Josh Campbell, hopefully all of us will all be in the same room at one time.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Yeah, absolutely. By all means.
Tyson, thanks, buddy. Do your thing,
Good
man.
night, people.
Take care, everybody.
Thank
Great
you,
to see you,
Mike.
John.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.